So no one should think that this is a record that's just simple celebration and pursuit of every single aspect of fame.
No.
And it's interesting because, in this year alone, and since the end of last year, beginning of this year, I've seen you with the Hiltons, Perez and Paris. I've seen you, on American Idol, which is one of our sort of iconic, it is the sort of destination television for this fame culture we're in. You live in TMZ land, LA now, right? I mean,
well, I'm never there, but
okay.
My shit's there.
All right. It's just, you talk about Andy a lot. I wonder, with what he represented, Warhol that is, of course, what he represented in his proclamations on fame, what he would have made of the world we live in 2009, where there are so many people who are famous in a fashion for really doing not much but having, say, 8 babies, or being Spencer and Heidi, and I'm sorry, what have they accomplished exactly? You're a creator, and you have whatever people make of it, and God knows you can be polarizing, but you've created something and continue to create. Do you have any thoughts on a world in which, for really doing not much of anything, people are celebrities?
Well, for me, I'm not interested in being a celebrity.
Yeah.
I'm interested in being an artist. And there's a very big difference. And I don't think there's a very fine line. I think it's pretty clear who's a celebrity and who's an artist. The catch is that when you make pop music, you meet people in certain scenarios. You DJ at a nightclub, people show up, there's cameras everywhere. Of course I get my picture snapped with lots of different people. I'm also a nice person. I never say no. Gaga, let me take a picture with you.
Right.
I'm too good to take a picture with that person. I'm just not like that. I'm like, hey, I worked really hard to get where I am, and all I care about is my music. But it's interesting you bring up American Idol, because even though that is like this incredibly American pop show that you're speaking about, sort of the antithesis of things that Warhol stood for, we had a very Warholian approach to that performance. The dress was designed by Benjamin Cho, who is a very dear friend of Matt's and now a dear friend of mine, and we believe in him. He's an incredible designer, and we wanted to put him in the mainstream. The violinist, Daniel Bernard Remain, very old, dear friend of mine from NYU that I knew. He's a violin hip-hop player. I flew him to California to play on Idol with me. For us, that was a New York performance. We did it.
Bringing some in New York.
We did it in Hollywood, but the heart and the soul behind the performance was from New York.
And I'll hand it to you. It was one of the, if not the most interesting thing on the entire this season of Idol. I mean, it was just, that show needs something slightly subversive to it. So, I think.
See, but we don't see it as subversive.
No.
We think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Subversive can be beautiful, but we don't. The conception that Gaga is kooky for the sake of being kooky is so wrong. We think it's beautiful. We love avant-garde, but it's not for the sake of avant-garde. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've heard you talk so many times about influences over the years. We talked about Warhol, but musically, I mean, you many times cited Bowie and the New York Dolls and Velvet Underground and plenty of people that I come across, because I feel like I've read maybe now a dozen interviews with you, and never, and I know it's an easy superficial comparison to make maybe in your view, I don't think ever once have I seen you on your own bring up the name Madonna. And I think beyond the superficial similarities, I think people come back to the Italian-American thing. They come back to the driven thing. They come back to the fact that there's a visual thread, and a thought goes into visuals as well as the music. The fact, and so I do think there's valid, grounds for comparison there. Do you agree? And do you have any in terms of your growing up, your influences, history with her?
Well, I love Madonna. I used to listen to Madonna with my mom at home when I was little, and we would dance around. And I have fond memories of learning about my sexuality through Madonna's music.
So you were, I think, you were born in '86.
86.
So she was about 5 years into her career when you were even born.
Right.
So do you remember like first hearing?
I remember the first time I heard Vogue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember the cover of the single on the white psych and the lingerie with the hair. And I just remember my mother was kind of like, oh, and I was really young, and I just couldn't. I used to play it over. You see, I don't listen to like my iPod shuffle. I'm not into shuffle.
Right.
I listened to one record for like a month.
Wow.
And I just like live in that one. I mean, actually, I listened to Abbey Road, I think, for like 4 months straight before I felt
That's
like
interesting.
I really
So you're not
understood.
really like an ADD type of person.
No. I like, for me with a record, I've got to like I have to like make love to the record and roll around in bed with it and have a cigarette, pillow talk, like everything.
Are you that way with projects you work on?
Yes.
With songs or with looks?
Yes, but to get back to the Madonna thing, because I don't want to deviate from your question, because it's funny, we kind of did, and you make your point. But I have found that I arrive upon comparisons more than I make an effort to be like them. So I was making music in New York, and I've been called so many different things. I mean, it's like, when I was a brunette, they called me Amy Winehouse in New York. When I was a blonde, they called me Madonna, and then they called me Christina, and then they called me Gwen. And then, I mean, it's like, they just list off every single female pop artist, and I think
that's kind of lazy.
I think it's just that people don't have good references, and they only their musical knowledge only goes so far back, so they can only mention those few names.